document is inaccurate.
They tell you when you're in the military that the VA was the only option.
I'd rather for the city to take the paint off the buildings than picking up dead bodies. Any day.
Mike Pompeo negotiated the release of 3 U.S. citizens held by North Korea. The new Secretary of State also finalized details for President Trump's summit meeting with Kim Jong-un, though exactly where and when it'll happen is still under wraps.
The very important thing to know about CIA is we follow the law. We followed the law then, and we follow the law now. But I would never permit CIA to resume an interrogation program.
A refugee camp that houses 700,000 Rohingya in Bangladesh sits on top of several elephant migration corridors. At least a dozen people have been killed in elephant attacks since last fall. And now the UN Refugee Agency and conservation specialists say they'll be ramping up prevention efforts. Turkey's president made a new move to expand his powers even more, introducing a bill that would let his cabinet bypass parliament and push through legislation without a vote. Louisiana is threatening to kick 37,000 people out of nursing homes and group homes because it can't afford to fund Medicaid. On Instagram, James Comey commemorated the 1-year anniversary of his firing, but from the looks of his other photos, he hasn't been having too bad a time. People in Iran burned American flags today in reaction to President Trump's decision to back out of the nuclear deal. It's drawing plenty of criticism from other countries, too, including the UK, France, and Germany. But there's one government that's especially happy about it: Israel.
Tonight I'm here to tell you one thing. Iran lied.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hated the deal from the start. But now that he's gotten his wish, the prospect of a conflict at his own doorstep just got a lot closer. Just this evening, the Israeli military said Iran fired rockets toward the Golan Heights, and the country is going on alert.
15 miles from the Lebanese border, Israeli tanks and paratroopers are running through maneuvers. These soldiers are all reservists. They were called up last week after the Israel Defense Forces warned about Iranian activity in Syria and said it was on high alert for an attack. Captain Ofek Sinei and his men told us they are no longer discussing if there'll be a war with Iran or one of its proxies, but when and how that war will start.
Our people are really motivated about serving our country. First and foremost, we're here to protect our family, our houses. In the Middle East, conflicts can occur every second.
Today, they're practicing how to capture a town controlled by one of those proxies, Hezbollah. The Iran-backed militant group is a sworn enemy of Israel. And since Hezbollah won more seats in Lebanon's parliament just this week, Israel considers Iran a bigger threat than ever. And it's not only Iran's foothold in Lebanon that bothers Israelis. In February, Iran shot down an Israeli fighter jet from inside Syria. That was in retaliation for Israel taking out an Iranian drone. The two have been trading tit-for-tat attacks ever since.
The level of these engagements, you're saying, has reached an unprecedented level?
With the Iranian element, it is unprecedented, yes. This is true. And there might be an escalation directly between Israel and Iran due to the exchange of blows. Hezbollah used to be on the line, and they are today also.
But Yaton doesn't see eye to eye with Israel's prime minister on Trump's decision to walk away from the nuclear deal.
So why do you think they should have stayed in the deal if all of these things were not contained?
The threat that the United States will get out of the deal would have been something realistic. Now, after they left the deal, they cannot anymore threaten they will leave the deal.
As Israel's military prep intensifies, its air defenses are ready to intercept missiles too. The Green Pine radar is a key component of the country's Iron Dome missile protection system.
When you talk about these radars and the threats, we're not excluding anything. If it threatens them,
then that's the purpose of these radars. No threats are excluded.
Well, Hezbollah fires a rocket.
Right.
This is the system that's supposed to be able to detect that.
Not supposed to, it does that.
Last night, Michael Avenatti, Stormy Daniels' lawyer, released a document he titled Project Sunlight. It focuses on Avenatti's nemesis, Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, and a shady company that Cohen set up right before the presidential election called Essential Consultants LLC. Avenatti hasn't said how he got the information, and Cohen said today that it's inaccurate, but so far it seems to be more or less reliable, and what it alleges looks bad for the Trump team. We know at the very least that two big companies paid Essential for consulting services. They've both confirmed this and claimed that they just wanted advice on dealing with the administration. But those confirmations point to the first big allegation that Avenatti is making against Cohen, and that's bank fraud. Because according to Avenatti, Cohen filled out paperwork saying Essential was a real estate consulting firm, that it expected to receive up to 20 payments per month between $1,000 and $10,000, and that the primary source of funds would be Americans or US-based companies. Just looking at what AT&T and Novartis have confirmed, if Avenatti is right, then it doesn't seem like Cohen properly represented his company to the bank. Novartis is a Swiss company. Neither Novartis nor AT&T is a real estate developer, and Novartis paid Essential $100,000 a month, which company sources said today was for, quote, access to not just Trump, but also the circle around him. Page 3 of the document also brings in another name, Russian oligarch Viktor Vekselberg. Vekselberg is one of several oligarchs who got sanctioned by the Treasury Department in April and owns a company associated with Columbus Nova, a private equity firm in the United States that paid Essential about $500,000. A lawyer for Columbus Nova confirmed the payments, but said Vekselberg was not involved in hiring or providing any money to Cohen. Their general counsel said any suggestion that Viktor Vekselberg or any of his companies owned or exercised any control over Columbus Nova is patently untrue. But even with that denial, the document still seems to connect a Russian oligarch on the administration's bad list to payments made to the president's lawyer. Now, it would seem that the Russian oligarch connection would be something that Mueller would want to investigate. But much of this Cohen stuff has been farmed out to the Southern District of New York. I talked about that and the document's other charges with Jeff Hauser, a government ethics expert and DOJ veteran. As we get further down and we start talking about payments to companies that may be involved with Russian oligarchs, that does seem to fall under the special counsel's purview, doesn't it?
Mueller's approach seems to be to minimize all leaking and to create a small hub of highly trained, extremely talented investigators at the top, and then work as much as possible with existing elements of law enforcement on discrete matters. And it also keeps as much of the information in parts of the law enforcement community that are harder to break up if and when there is a Saturday night massacre and Trump fires Mueller.
But it also does something else. It amps up the pressure on Cohen himself to cooperate. Does it really, in some ways, come back to the federal prosecutors being able to, I don't know, get people to flip?
I think it does. That is a common way you go after people at the top of a food chain, is that you work your way from the bottom up. But that's how you bring down mafia bosses. You start at the bottom and you get people to flip, because it's very hard to get to the inner sanctum. The inner sanctum doesn't commit blatant acts. They rely on other people to do the most obvious criminality.
The Avenatti document doesn't spell out the downfall of President Trump. It's not even close to that. And even in the calls our team made today, we found errors in it. One company mentioned, Actuarial Partners, says the Michael Cohen they dealt with is a different Michael Cohen. But what the document does do is lead to approximately 1,000 more questions. The kind of questions that Mueller has a head start on.
Robert Mueller's team was talking to Novartis in November of 2017. We're having this conversation in May 2018. We don't know how much more Robert Mueller's team has learned in that subsequent 6 months. I'm suspecting they've learned a lot.
Today's curriculum will revolve around connections.
Ineke Honning was in the Air Force for 6 years. She never saw combat, but in her first year of military tech school, she was sexually assaulted.
I ended up having like panic attacks and showing signs of depression and stuff like that. I wasn't sleeping, which is what actually ended up sending me to the doctor because I hadn't slept in 72 hours.
It sounds like it got pretty bad for you.
Yeah, I definitely had my fair share of rough nights. I was cutting myself at one point. I was diagnosed with PTSD after the last rape. So yeah. That's what I deal with on a daily basis. When people are like, did you see combat? And I'm like, no, but saw a lot of other stuff.
So Ineke turned to the VA for help, only to run into one of its perennial problems: long wait times.
I thought that I'll take my chances with the VA. Then I didn't get seen for 6 months. And so then I called the Cohen Clinic and I was like, hey guys, I need some help. They got me in a week.
The clinic Ineke ended up at was run by the Cohen Veteran Network, a private mental health group funded by hedge fund billionaire Steve Cohen, who is at the heart of one of the biggest insider trading scandals in history. So this is one of the first clinics in the network.
It is, yes. We really want to make sure.
CVN started 2 years ago. It's minuscule next to the VA. The VA's mental health practitioners see 1.6 million people every year, while CVN has only seen 6,000 people in its entire history. Right now, CVN has 13 clinics across the country. By 2020, they'll have 25 and will have spent over $275 million. Caitlin Thompson is CVN's clinical director. She joined Cohen's network last year after serving as the head of suicide prevention at the VA.
Why did you leave the VA?
It was time to move from that large organization where change can be slow to a place where I could really be more innovative.
Why not stay and fix the problem at the VA?
So I think that one reason was I did really want to move to a place where all veterans could be cared for.
The VA is legally limited in treating certain groups.
Ma'am, I'm just here to see you, Dr.
She'll be out with you in just a moment. Have a seat.
All right, thank you.
Those with non-service related injuries, family members, and vets with a dishonourable discharge. CVN doesn't have any of those barriers.
So do you see yourselves as supplementing VA care or competing with it?
I see it absolutely as supplementing. I see it as complementing VA care. I think that we are enhancing each other. And so the care that we can provide can enhance the care that VA can provide and vice versa. And so I don't see it as being competitive at all.
The VA itself sees CVN as useful in plugging mental health coverage gaps. The veteran service organisations and others think CVN's motives are more nefarious. They think it's a Trojan horse that could help lead to the privatisation of the VA. Two ranking members of the Congressional Committees on Veteran Affairs recently wrote the VA secretary questioning whether CVN is trustworthy enough to provide veteran care. We reached out to Steve Cohen for an interview, but he declined. Suzanne Gordon, a veteran healthcare expert, thinks CVN could eventually divert resources away from the VA itself.
And the real worry here is that if you are giving money to private sector, whether it's Cohen or anybody, out of whose budget is that coming? If it's coming out of the VA's clinical and care budget, then it depletes the VA. And if that's true, that it jeopardizes that, then that's not a good thing. It's been tremendous to have you return.
CVN says at the moment, none of its costs are passed on to veterans. All care is paid for by Steve Cohen.
And I'm actually sleeping a lot better too, so that's always kind of good.
But CVN's long-term strategy does factor in getting money from the government.
It's not just the direct suicide prevention programs that prevent suicide. It's all kinds of other programs that help veterans manage pain and learn yoga and stress reduction and mindfulness meditation. All these participate in this tapestry of suicide prevention. You start pulling those threads apart. You start taking money away and budgets away. And the threads begin to be pulled in all kinds of directions. And pretty soon, you don't have a tapestry anymore. You have like big holes through which veterans can slip.
Without additional funding, it's unlikely that CVN will ever be able to treat veterans on the scale that the VA does. But for a lot of vets, who's treating them matters less than whether they can get treated at all.
Princess, inside, come on. Inside. They tell you when you're in the military that the VA was the only option. I'm military, I'm retired. That's where you go. It's kind of just, and you're used to in the military being told what to do. I was going to the VA and it just wasn't working. I know there's a lot of people that go there, and I know that, and I understand that. It's just, it doesn't help me.
Yup.
See that big brown house?
Yup.
It's right there.
Yup.
Go, where'd he go? Man, y'all running out, bitch.
All started on social media, but it turned into a very real and dangerous situation. So-called paintball wars.
5 innocent people have been shot with paintballs, 3 of them children.
Police say the so-called paintball war began on social media as someone's idea to help stop the violence.
Me and Smoke and my guy dude, it was really his idea. He like, we started a paintball fight. Who we gonna beef with? And I'm like, me and another partner. He's like, the Cooper niggas.
Fuck Cooper, nigga. Yeah, fuck Cooper. Where y'all niggas at, nigga? We on y'all niggas' ass, nigga.
So then I'm like, fuck it. They outside. We gonna pull up and shoot them.
He shot me and my brother unexpected. We talking. It felt like it was a real shootout. We're in the back of a truck. Duck hang out the window. Laughing, yeah.
20, 30 minutes later, they pull up, shoot me down on my house. I thought it was a game. They come right back. Then it became a whole 6 mile first warrant. It just started going real heavy, man. Like real heavy.
That's how we ran around, man. We putting the real guns up, picking the paintballs up, you know what I'm saying? We ran around sliding on everybody. Stop the violence, man. Nobody's safe. Nobody's safe, though. We've been traded on each other. Us too.
Paintballs up, guns down. It's basically just doing something positive to keep away from the negative, you know?
Everywhere you go, you will see a gun. Nah, when we started paintballing, everywhere we went, we seen a paintball. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather get hit with a paintball than a bullet.
You know, vest. I stay prepared just in case a motherfucker try to slide. You never know who tried to slide. Gloves. This type of air right here, this nitrogen. This'll last you all motherfucking day. All goddamn day. Main thing is we do this shit to have fun, man. To stop all the bullshit going around in our city. You hear that motherfucker break that glass, so you know what it is.
Honestly, you probably spend about no less than 1,000 to 1,500 paintballing. That's if you want to have fun.
I'm just telling you my total, what I spent when I first got into it, my 1,200. After that, it was like $50 a day. So all we need is to fill up air now. $50, $60 a day. Can't be broke when you're in the sport, man. We squashed a lot of beef that was going on. Because there was a couple dudes that really ain't fuck with each other. So when I seen them together, I knew this shit was real.
It's definitely brought people together. People that didn't know people, that know each other. Like we was in the club last night. I'm bumping files of people that was in a paintball fight that I never knew. Just because us friendly talking shit on Instagram, following each other. I probably gained about 400 to 500 followers just off during the paintball movement. So it definitely brought a lot of people together.
I told you.
What?
Here they come. See? Just enough time, man. This shit crazy. God damn.
The chief of police. His bitch ass talking about we motherfucking impersonating weapons and
I'm calling them replica firearms because when you look at some of these paint guns, they look just like an actual firearm. Police officers, when confronted with someone with a replica weapon, or in this case a paint gun, they may make the mistake thinking it's a real firearm and feel threatened. There may be a deadly response to that.
Yeah, we still go out. It's like every blue moon we gotta sneak out because of the police.
We go out sometimes, but at this point, we had to stop it because no one want to go to jail and come out of the money just for something that we just doing on a friendly point. I mean, to the police, it's gonna look like a real gun, period, no matter what it is. It could be a water gun. To the police, it's gonna look like a real gun.
But they hate it. They hate us, bro, by us being young and black. I'd rather for the city to take the paint off the buildings than picking up dead bodies any day. We already the murder capital. If we can paintball with each other and don't kill each other, what you rather have?